Hello everyone. Today we are going to start with a topic called as SCTP packet format, and we'll first discuss the format of a packet, and along with it we'll also discuss the different types of chunks associated with the same. Now, an SCTP packet has a mandatory general header and a set of blocks called as chunk. There are two types of chunk over here. First of all is a control chunk, and then the second one is a data chunk. Now, a control chunk controls and maintains the association, wherein the data chunk, carries the user data. Now, in a packet, the control chunks come before the data chunks. The figure shows the general format of an SCTP packet over here. Now, what do you say? Huh. The general header, or I would say, as you can see over the screen over here. Now, the general header or the packet header is what do you say? Defines the endpoints of each association to which the packet belongs, and it guarantees that the packet belongs to a particular association or a connection, and it preserves the integrity of what do you say, the contents of the packet, including the header itself. Now, the format of the general header is as shown in the figure. Now, if you look carefully, it is being divided into four major categories. First one being the source port address of 16 bits, the next one being the destination port address of again 16 bits. Then we have a verification tag of 32 bits, and lastly we have a checksum for 32 bits. So now let's discuss what each and every part is there to function. Now, there are four fields in the general header. Now, the source port address, this is a 16 bit field that defines the port number of the process sending the packet. Now, destination port address, again, this is a 16-bit field that defines the port number of the process which is going to receive the packet. Next, we have the verification tag over here. Now, the verification tag, it is a number. Verification tag is a number that matches a packet to an association or a connection. Now, this prevents a packet from a previous association from being mistaken as a packet in this association. It serves as an identifier for the association. It is repeated in every packet during the association. What do you say? There is a separate verification used for each direction when an active association is being carried out. Now, we have a checksum field. This 32-bit field contains a CRC32 checksum. What do you say? We should note that we can always note that the size of this checksum is increased from 16 bits, that is from UDP, TCP and IP, to 32 bits in an SCTP to allow the use of CRC32 checksum. Now, we are proceeding for the further type of what do you say chunks over here. The first and foremost is the what do you say a basic chunk diagram, wherein the control information or the user data is carried. Now, chunks have a common layout which is as shown over here. It has a type field, it has a flag field, it has a length field, and then chunk information which is a multiple of 4 bytes over here. Now, the first 3 bytes, sorry, the first 3 fields are common to all the chunks. The information field depends on the type of chunk. The important point to remember is that SCTP requires the information section to be a multiple of 4 bytes. If not, padding bytes, that is nothing but 8 zeros, are added at the end of the section over here. Now, chunks need to what do you say terminate on a 32-bit 32-bit or a 4 byte boundary. Now, the description of the common fields are as what do you say are as below. The type, that is nothing but over here it is a 8-bit field and can define up to 256 types of chunks. Now, only a few have been defined so far. The rest are reserved for future use. The next we have is a flag field, the one which is mentioned over here. Now, this 8-bit field defines special flags that a particular chunk may need. Each bit has a different meaning depending on the type of chunk over here. Then we have the length over here. since the size of the information section is dependent on the type of chunk, we need to define the chunk boundaries. This 16-bit field defines the total, what do you say, size of the chunk in bytes, including the type flag, including the type flag and the length field. If a chunk carries no information, the value of the length is 4 bytes. Note that the length of the padding, if any, is not included in the calculation of the length field. This helps the receiver find out how many useful bytes a chunk carries. If the value is not a multiple of 4, the receiver knows there is padding. For example, when the receiver sees a length of 17, it knows that the next number, that is a multiple of 4, is 20. So there are 3 bytes of padding that must be discarded. But if the receiver sees a length of 16, now it knows that there is no padding over there. Now the data chunk, now as you might be aware, the data chunk, it carries the user data. A packet may contain 0 or more data chunks over here. The data chunk is being divided into many sections. First of all is for type, we define the type of the data. Then this ones are being reserved. Then you have some certain flags over here. Then there is length over here. Then a certain transmission sequence number or a TSN number is being identified. Then a stream identifier or a stream sequence number is being defined. Then we have a protocol identifier, and then the final and not the least, we have a user data. So different types of chunks will have different types of data chunks, and different types of flags and registers are being used. So let's see each of them one by one. Now to just give you a briefing about data chunk, the description of the common fields are the same. The type field has a value of 0. The flag field 5. The flag field has 5 reserved bits and 3 defined bits, U, B and E. As you can see over here, the U or the unordered field, when it is set to 1, it signals the unordered data. Now in this case, the value of the stream sequence number is ignored. The B, that is nothing but the beginning, and E, that is the end bits, together define the position of a chunk in a message that is fragmented. When your B is equals to 1 and E is equals to 1, that means there is no fragmentation. Your first and the last bits, the whole message is carried in one chunk. When your B is equals to 1 and E is equals to 0, it is the first segment. When your B is equals to 0 and E is equals to 1, it is the last fragment. Now when your B is equals to 0 and E is equals to 0, it is a middle fragment, that is neither the first nor the last. Note that the value of the length field does not include padding. Now this value cannot be less than 17 because the data chunk must always carry at least 1 byte of data over there. The next field is the transmission sequence number over here. Now this 32-bit field defines the transmission sequence number. It is a sequence number that is initialized in an init chunk for one direction and in the init chunk for the opposite direction. Now stream identifier. Stream identifier, that is nothing but SI. This is a 16-bit field which defines each stream in an association. All the chunks belonging to the same stream in one direction carry the same stream identifier. Then we have the stream sequence number. The stream sequence number, or the SSN, it is a 16-bit field which defines a chunk in a particular stream in one direction. Then we have a protocol identifier over here. The protocol identifier is a 32-bit field which can be used by the application program to define the type of data. It is generally ignored by the SCTP layer. Now the user data. The user data carries the actual user data. SCTP has some specific rules about the user data field. First and foremost, no chunk can carry data belonging to more than one message, but a message can be spread over several data chunks. Now, second, this field cannot be empty. It must have at least 1 byte of user data. Third, if the data if the data cannot end at a 32-bit boundary, padding must be added. These padding bytes are not included in the value of the length field. Now, to just give you an overall gist, a data chunk cannot more than data belonging to more than one message, but a message can be split into several chunks. The data field of the data chunk must carry at least one byte of data, which means the value of length field cannot be less than 17. Now, the next we have is the init chunk. Now, the init chunk or the initiation chunk is the first chunk sent by an endpoint to establish an association over here. The packet that carries this chunk cannot carry any other control or data chunks. The value of the verification tag for this packet is 0, which means no tag has yet been defined. The format is as shown over here. The three common fields, that is nothing but the type, flag, and the length, are as before. The value of the type field is 1, the value of the flag field is 0, and the value of the length field is a minimum of 20. More if there are optional parameters. The other fields are explained as below. The initiation tag over here, that is the first one over here. This 32-bit field defines the value of the verification tag for packets traveling in the opposite direction. As we have mentioned before, all the packets have a verification tag in the general header. This tag is same for all the packets traveling in one direction in an association. The value of this tag is determined during the association establishment. The endpoint that initiates the association defines the value of this tag in the initiation tag field. This value is used as the verification tag in the rest of the packets sent from the other direction. For example, when endpoint A starts an association with an endpoint B, A defines an initiation tag value, say X, which is used as a verification tag for all the packets sent from B to A. The initiation tag is a random number between 0 and 2 raised to 32 minus 1. The value of 0 defines no association and is permitted only by the general header of the init chunk. Now, we have the advertised receiver window credit. This 32-bit field is used in a flow control and defines the initial amount of data in bytes that the sender of the init chunk can allow. If the receiving window value that will be used by the receiver to know how much it is the receiving window value that will be sent by the receiver to know how much data to send. Note that in an SPTP, sequence number are in terms of chunk. Now, outbound stream over here, the outbound stream that is mentioned over here, the outbound stream, this is a 16-bit field which defines the number of streams that the initiator of the association suggests for streams in an outbound direction. It may be reduced by the other endpoint. Then we have the maximum inbound stream. Now, this is a 16-bit field which defines the maximum number of streams that the initiator of the association can support in the inbound direction. Note that this is a maximum number and cannot be increased by other endpoint. Initial TSN. This 32-bit field initializes the transmission sequence number, that is nothing but TSN, in the outbound direction. Note that each data chunk in an association has to have one TSN. The value of this field is a random number less than 2 raised to 32. Now, variable length parameters. These optional parameters may be added to the init chunk to define the IP address of sending endpoint. The number of IP addresses the endpoint can support, that is known as multi-home, the preservation of the cookie state, the type of addresses, and support of explicit congestion notification, that is known as ECN. To give you a gist, no other chunk can be carried in a packet that carries an init chunk over here. Then we have the init acknowledgement. Now, The init acknowledgement chunk, that is also known as initiation acknowledgement chunk, is the second chunk sent during association establishment. The packet that carries this chunk cannot carry any other control or data chunks. The value of verification tag for this packet, which is located in the general header, is the value of the initiation tag, which is defined in the received init chunk. The format is as shown over here. If you can see, it is almost similar to the one which we had discussed previous to the init chunk. The only difference over here is the type is set to 2, wherein the type is set to 2, and we have some mandatory parameters which were not present in the init chunk. So init acknowledgement chunk is a little bit advanced version of init chunk over here. So let's see what are we looking into now. Note that the fields in the main part of the chunk are the same as those defined in the init chunk. However, a mandatory parameter is required for this chunk. The parameter of type 7 defines the state cookie sent by the sender of this chunk. We discuss the use of cookies later if needed. The chunk can also have optional parameters. Note that the initiation tag field in this chunk initiates the value of the verification tag for future packets traveling from the opposite direction. Now, to give you a gist, the no other chunk can be carried in a packet that carries an init acknowledgement chunk over here. Cookie echo. The cookie echo chunk. The cookie echo chunk is the third chunk sent during the association establishment. It is sent by the endpoint that receives an init acknowledgement chunk, normally the sender of the init chunk. The packet that carries this chunk can also carry user data. This format, the format is as shown in the figure. Now, note that this is a very simple chunk of type 10. In the information section, it echoes the state cookie that the endpoint has previously received in the init acknowledgement. The receiver of the init act cannot open the cookie. Now, we have the cookie acknowledgement. The cookie acknowledgement chunk is the fourth and the last chunk sent during the association establishment, the cookie chunk over here. Uh, it is sent by an endpoint that receives a cookie echo chunk. The packet that carries this chunk can also carry user data. The format is as shown in the figure. Note that this is a very simple type of chunk of type 11. The length of the chunk is exactly 4 bytes. Now, then we have the SAC chunk. Now, the SAC chunk, that is nothing but the selective acknowledgement chunk, acknowledges the receipt of data packets. The figure shows the format of the SAC chunk over here. The common fields are the same as discussed previously. The type field has a value of 3 over here. The flag bits are all set to zeros. Now, cumulative TSN acknowledgement, the one which is over here, the cumulative TSN acknowledgement. Now, this 32-bit field defines the TSN of the last data chunk received in the sequence. Then we have the advertised receiver window credit. This 32-bit field is the updated value for the receiver window size. Then we have the number of gap acknowledgement blocks. This 16-bit field defines the number of gaps in the data chunk received after the cumulative TSN. Note that the term gap is misleading here. The gap defines the sequence of the received chunks, not the missing chunks over here, beta. Number of duplicates. This 16 field bit this 16-bit field defines the number of duplicate chunks following the cumulative TSN. Then we have gap acknowledgement block start offset. For each gap block, this 16-bit field gives the starting TSN relative to the cumulative TSN. Gap acknowledgement block and offset. For each gap block, this 16-bit field gives the ending TSN relative to the cumulative TSN. Then we have the duplicate TSN. For each duplicate chunk, this 32-bit field gives the TSN of the duplicate chunk over here. Then we have the heartbeat, or what do you say, the heartbeat acknowledgement. Just a moment. Just give me 5 seconds. Yes, the heartbeat chunk and the heartbeat acknowledgement, are similar except for the type field over here. The first has a type of 4 and the second type of 5. The figure, being which is being depicted over here shows the format of these chunks over here. These two chunks are used to periodically probe the condition of an association. An endpoint sends a heartbeat chunk. The peer responds with a heartbeat acknowledgement if it is alive. The format has the common three fields and a mandatory parameter field which that provides sender specific information. This information in the heartbeat chunk includes the local time and the address of the sender. It is copied without change into the heartbeat acknowledgement chunk over here. Then we have the shutdown acknowledgement and the shutdown complete. We have shutdown, shutdown acknowledgement, and shutdown complete. Now, these three chunks used for closing an association are similar in nature. The shutdown chunk, that is a type 7, is 8 bytes in length. Uh, the second 4 bytes, define the cumulative TSN. The shutdown acknowledgement chunk, that is a type 8, is also 4 bytes in length. The shutdown complete chunk, that is a type 14, is also 4 bytes long and has 1 bit flag. The T flag. The T flag shows that the sender does not have a TCP table, which we will be looking at when we will be doing chapter on TCP. Now, then we have the error chunk over here. The error chunk is sent when an endpoint finds some error in a received packet. Note that the sending of an error chunk does not imply the aborting of the association. This would require an abort chunk. The figure over here shows the format of the error chunk. So this is the diagram of the error chunk. The errors are defined in the given table over here. As you can see, if you have an error, uh, if you have these are the some errors which can be mainly because of either say invalid stream identifier or out of resource, or in fact if there is no user data, then these are the types of error which is being mentioned in the error chunk, and it is being resolved accordingly. Now, then we have the abort chunk. The abort chunk is sent when an endpoint finds a fatal error and needs to abort the association or the connection. The error types are the same as those for error chunk. Now, the figure over here shows the format of an abort chunk. Now, so this was all for the topic called as data packets and the segment of a SCTP packet format, which includes your data header and your chunks. The next topic that we are going to start is SCTP flow control. So, but of course we did discuss for UDP flow. We For UDP we did discuss three things to be in precise. Then for TCP also we did discuss three things, that is nothing but flow control, then error control and congestion control. Similarly, over here we are going to start with the discussion of SCTP flow control. So yes, flow control in SCTP is similar to that in TCP. Now, in TCP, we need to deal with only one unit of data, the byte. In SCTP, we need to handle two units of data, the byte and the chunk. The values of receiving window and the congestion window are expressed in bytes. The values of TSN and the acknowledgement are expressed in chunks. To show the concept, we make some unrealistic assumptions. We assume that there is never congestion in the network and that the network is error free. In other words, we assume that the congestion window is infinite and no packet is lost, delayed, or arrives out of order. We also assume that the data transfer is unidirectional. We correct our unrealistic assumptions later when needed. Now, the current HTTP implementation still use a byte-oriented window for flow control. We will, however, show a buffer in terms of chunk to make the concept easier to understand. So for that we have first the HTTP flow control at the receiver side. Now the receiver has one buffer, that is queue, and three variables over here. The queue holds the received data chunks that have not been yet read by the process. The first variable holds the last TSN received, that is nothing but the cumulative cum TSN. The second variable holds the available buffer size, that is nothing but the win size or the window size. The third variable holds the cumulative the third variable holds the last accumulative acknowledgement, that is nothing but last acknowledgement. The figure over here shows the queues and the variables at the receiver side. So now what happens is, when the site receives a data chunk, it stores it and at the end of the buffer and subtracts the size of the chunk from the window size. The TSN number of the chunk is stored in the cum TSN variable. When the process reads a chunk, it removes it from the queue and adds the size of the removed chunk to window size. Now, when the receiver decides to send a uh, S acknowledgement or stack, it checks the value of the last act. If it is less than the cum TSN, it sends a stack with a cumulative TSN number equal to cum TSN. It also includes the value of window size or win size as the advertised window size. Now the value of the last acknowledgement or the last act is then updated to hold the value of cum TSN. The next we'll move on to sender side, which is over here. The sender has one buffer or one queue and three variables, the cur TSN, receiving window, and in transit. Now, as shown in the figure, we assume that each chunk is 100 bytes long over here. Now, over here, the buffer holds the chunks produced by the process that have either been sent or are ready to be sent. The first variable, that is nothing but the CURTSN, refers to the next chunk to be sent. All chunks in the queue with a TSN less than this value have been sent but not acknowledged. They are outstanding. The second variable, that is nothing but the receiving window, holds the last value advertised by the receiver in bytes. The third variable, that is nothing but in transit, holds the number of bytes in the transit in transit bytes sent but not yet acknowledged. The following is the procedure used by the sender. Now, a chunk pointed by the cur TSN can be sent if the size of the data is less than or equal to the quantity, that is nothing but receiving window minus the in transit. After sending the chunk, the value of the cur TSN is incremented by 1 and now points to the next chunk to be sent. The value of in transit is incremented by the size of the data in the transmitted chunk. Now, when a stack is received, uh, the chunk the chunks with a TSN less than or equal to cumulative TSN in the stack are removed from the queue and discarded. The sender does not have to worry about them anymore. Now, the value of in transit is reduced by the total size of the discarded chunks. The value of receiving window is updated with the value of the advertised window in the stack. Now, then we move on to the next topic called as error control. Now, HTTP, like TCP, is a reliable transport layer protocol. It uses a stack chunk to report the state of the receiver buffer to the sender. Each implementation uses a different set of entities and timers for the receiver and sender side. We use a very simple design to convey the concept now. Over here at the receiving side over here at the receiving side the receiver stores all the chunks that have arrived in its queue, including the out of order ones. However, it leaves some spaces for the missing chunks. It discards the duplicate messages but keeps track of them for the reports to the sender. Now the figure, what do you say? It shows the typical design for the receiver side and the state of the receiving queue at a particular point in time. Now the last acknowledgement was sent for data chunk 20. Now the available window size is what do you say 1000 over here. Chunks 21 to 23 have been received in order. The first out of order block contains chunks 26 to 28. The second out of order block contains chunks 31 to 34. Now a variable holds the value of cum tsn. An array of variables keep track of the beginning and the end of each block that is out of order. An array of variables hold the duplicate chunks received. Note that there is no need for storing duplicate chunks in the queue, which but of course they will be discarded. The figure also shows the stack chunk, what do you say, that will be sent to report the state of the receiver to the sender. The TSN number for out of order chunks are relative or offsets, you would say, to the cumulative TSN. Now when you move on to the sender side, it is a little bit simplified version of the receiving part. Now at the sender side, our design demands two buffer or two queues, a sending queue and a retransmission queue. We also use three variables, that is nothing but receiving window, in transit, and cur tsn as described in the previous section. The figure over here shows the typical design of what do you say flow error control at the sender site. Now the sending queue holds your chunks 23 to 40, as you can see over here. The chunks 23 to 36 have already been sent but not acknowledged. They are outstanding chunks. The cur tsn points to the next chunk to be sent, that is 37. We assume that each chunk is 100 bytes, which mean that 1400 bytes of data, that is from chunks 23 to 36, are in transit. The sender at this moment has a retransmission queue. When a packet is sent, a retransmission timer starts for that packet, that is all the data for all the data chunks in that packet. Some implementation uses one single timer for the entire association, but we continue with our tradition of one timer for each packet for simplification. Now, when the read transmission timer for a packet expires, or three stacks arrive that declare a packet as missing or fast retransmission, the chunks in that packet are moved to the retransmission queue to be resent. Now, these chunks are considered lost rather than outstanding. The chunks in the retransmission queue have priority. In other words, the next time the sender sends a chunk, it would be chunk 21 from the transmission queue. Now, uh, then we have an SCTP, what do you say, SCTP congestion control. Now, SCTP like TCP is a transport layer protocol with your packet subject to congestion in the network. The SCTP designers have used the same strategies we have described for congestion control in the chapter for TCP. SCTP has, but of course, a slow start, that is nothing but your exponential increase. It does have a congestion avoidance, that is nothing but additive increase, and congestion detection, that is nothing but multiplicative decrease phases. Like TCP, SCTP also uses fast what do you say retransmission and fast recovery. Now, congestion control and multi-homing. The congestion control in SCTP is more complicated since the host may have more than what do you say since the host may have more than one IP address. In this case, there are more than one path for the data in the network. Each of these paths may encounter different level of congestion. This implies that the site needs to have different values of congestion window for each IP address. Now, then we have the explicit congestion notification. The explicit congestion notification, as defined for wide area networks, is a process that enables a receiver to explicitly inform the sender of any congestion experienced in the network. If a receiver encounters many delayed or lost packets, it is it is an indication of probable congestion. SCTP can use ECN or explicit congestion notification option in the init and init acknowledgement chunks to allow both the ends to negotiate the use of ECN. If both the parties agree, the receiver can inform the sender of congestion by sending an ECNE, that is nothing but explicit congestion notification echo chunk with each packet until it receives a CWR or congestion window reduced chunk to show that the sender has reduced its congestion window. We have not as we have not discussed these two chunks, that is nothing but ECNE and CWR, since they are not a part of this standard, and because the discussion of this explicit congestion is way beyond the syllabus. So yes, I would like to stop over here, and in the next for the next time we would be starting with a new module altogether. So this is the end of your second module. So yes, please do study and do message me in case of any doubt. Up till then, thank you.